sometimes it just takes looking beyond ourselves and asking, how can we continue to grow? And the answer has always been the same, and it's always been true. Lean into your humanity and lean into the authentic you.
Hey, Nicole, what do you get when a former corporate CEO and a do-gooding executive walk into a recording studio?
Well, Aaron, nothing, because the two of us are usually on my couch or Zoom, because wine.
You get a podcast created for Gen X women who are bought into the corporate world, but fed up with the BS.
I know, it's how to thrive the 9 to 5 or 6 or 7.
It's career therapy, it's comedy, it's definitely full-on authenticity. Basically, we give you tangible strategies to rise in your career without compromising everything else.
Because work doesn't have to suck.
Hey guys, it's Erin here. I am here with another interview, an amazing guest. His name is Rashad Rayford, and I met him, was lucky enough to be seated at a table with him in Nashville about 6 months ago, and he just blew me away immediately. He's so unique. He's an award-winning speaker, but he's also an actor and a poet. He's also won the MOTH Story Hour. So if anybody's a MOTH fan, he was a GRANDslam champion. And what he does a lot of things, but he infuses poetry into keynote speaking and is just known for this high energy presentations that have this blend of storytelling and spoken word and actionable insights. And so I just adore him and wanted to bring his insights and his inspiration to all of you. And here are some of the things we talk about. We talk about how boredom was actually critical to him finding his calling. Guys, we have to find a way to get bored again. Put away the phones. Like, it's so important. He also talks about why you shouldn't try and microwave your growth. And tells some really fun anecdotes and stories there. We also talk about how he in my world, he 50% ruled this concept of poetry and keynote speaking. And it further shows you how people are just so ready for something fresh and new. And when you smash together two things that you love, you stand out and people are engaged and it just explodes. We also talked about how he almost didn't do the thing that really launched his speaking career. And he shares the simple acronym and mindset shift that's helped him through that, and also so many other challenges. And then you have to stay till the end. I normally have a softball question at the very end. I told him I gave him a fastball, a baseball, a high-flying, non-planned question where I asked him, how he can make your life suck less, which is our standard question, but do it through poem. And I thought he would just take something off the shelf, one of his favorite poems, but he doesn't. He improvises and just leaves us all with such tremendous inspiration. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Rashad. I met you a couple of months ago and sort of know you as this poet keynoter, but you're an actor. You're a hip hop artist. You're the keynoter. You're a poet. I think it's sort of the epitome of a dream of some people to just do all the things. Where did it start?
So I was in high school, and my senior year, I had an English class, and then I could leave school early, but I couldn't leave until a certain time. So there was an English class in the morning, and then there was this 2-hour block where I still had to stay in school. And they were like, well, you can take a PE class, or you can be an office worker. And I was like, I don't really want to go to PE every day, because I think it was a bunch of sophomores. And I was like, I don't feel like being in there for 2 hours. So I was like, I'll just do the office thing. And then they were like, well, the office doesn't have any more slots, so you have to go to the library and work in the library, which I was like, all right, cool. And for our younger viewers out there, this was pre-internet. So we probably had 4 computers in the library that had internet, and it was probably super slow. So I was sitting at the circulation desk. I think early on I was doing the Dewey Decimal System stuff, right? Look it up to my folks who don't know, right? But then I was bored. I would just be sitting at the desk, and I would just literally be bored out of my mind. And I know I was in the library, I could have read, but I really wasn't a big reader at that time. And so I just started writing. And then all these poems just started to come out of nowhere. And I was like, what is this? Like, and I remember writing a poem for my mom in like 6th grade, but like, I think that was probably because we were told to or something for Mother's Day.
Right.
So that was it. Like, I didn't have any prior like poetry experience or writing poetry or anything, but it just started to come out. And fast forward, I went to college the next year, and I think like the second to last day that I was at school freshman year, I saw this flyer kind of hidden behind another flyer in the cafeteria, and it was like open mic poetry. And I was like, oh, and I had missed it. It was like a 6-month-old flyer. And I was like, this is, so my goal was like, I'm going to go home this summer, and then next time I'm going to figure out what this is, and I'm going to be a part of this. And so I went home and came back to school the next year, found the poetry club, wrote a poem. I remember going to an open mic, and like I still remember it very vividly. I had on a backpack, a blue jacket. And the president of the poetry club was like, hey, are you going to perform? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a little something later. And I performed this poem about solar systems. It was crazy. I don't know. I just remember I did the poem. People clapped. I remember I rushed out because the adrenaline was so high. Like I was so high. I rushed out, and the cold air hit me in the face as I was walking back to the dorm. And then when I got back to my dorm room, I was like, ooh, something's happened. Like,
yeah,
kind of it. And that's kind of where it started. I ended up joining the poetry club, eventually became the host of the open mics within like a few months. And just kind of started to come out of, I guess, what would be my shell a little bit. I went home that summer and did this professional theater training program. A friend of mine, we were playing basketball, and he was like, I'm going to go audition for this play. And I was like, oh man, I kind of always wanted to do some plays. And he was like, oh, come audition. So I went and auditioned, ended up getting an understudy role. And then about a week and a half into the process, the director was like, hey, our main actor, which he was a huge actor at the time in town where I'm from, and in Nashville, and he was like, he can't do the play, so I need you to be.
Oh my God. It's like the movie. It's like a movie.
I was like, whoa,
It never happens.
I was like, no, sir. Like, I'm like, I've never acted before. This is a pretty heavy play. I don't know what I'm doing. Because the understudy role, I was fine with. I could just play, sit in the background, and just learn the lines and just not have any pressure. But now it's not the pressure of the role that I was even going to do. It's the pressure of the main role, the lead character. And again, because this was a professional training program, all the actors were like top-notch folks who were, at home from NYU or DePaul. And so like, these are actors, and I can't act with them, but he was a great director. His name was Barry Scott. He passed away a few years ago. He's one of my mentors, but he just was like, you'll do this, you got this. And so sometimes I think it just takes people kind of believing in you and seeing things in you that you don't necessarily see in yourself. And it's funny because this kind of tracks to how I got into speaking as well. So it's always like, for me, it's always that thing of, making sure that I help pour into people like people pour it into me, because sometimes we don't see our light. We don't see our shine. We may see a little bit of it, but we may not see it fully until someone else is like, hey man, you're the sun, you're shining, right? And so, so that was amazing. That experience was amazing. I went to back to school in August after I did that play, and everything changed. I was an engineering major, and it was like, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. So it's one of those things, you're coming home and you're telling your parents, hey, mom and dad, like, I don't want to be an engineer anymore. I want to be a poet. But I have support.
I'm not taking the guaranteed money. I'm taking
I'm going to go this other way. But I'm grateful that I have parents who, always just poured into me to, they raised me right, and they raised us right. And so when we got to the point where we can make our decisions, they trusted our decisions. And I'm so grateful for that, because I know a lot of people don't have that story of people who backed them and supported them, and to say, whatever your passions are, chase those, and you'll figure it out. And so I was grateful to have that kind of foundation where I could go. And I still have an engineering degree that's in my mom's house. Like, it's on her mantle. I've never done anything with it, simply because, again, it just wasn't my passion. And so I went back to school. There was a TV show that we created. I was a part of that TV show. I hosted that TV show. So I ended up being in the telecom building more than I was in the engineering building. And telecom students would be like, while we're on set doing the show, they'd say, we see you here at the show like all the time, but we never see you in class. Like what is going on? I'm like, oh, I'm not a telecom major. Cause they, again, this is
Yeah.
like the early 2000s. So it was very awkward for someone, to be an engineer, to be in their building like that. But it was just me following my passion and doing what I love to do. So yeah, they kind of happened simultaneously to begin with. And the journey just kind of took off from there. So
I love it. Well, and I have something called the 50% rule as my second book. And it's this concept of sort of always doing half normal, half new, or this concept of like, there's a bunch of sub lessons. And one of them is mashing together your two passions. And I say the 50% rule is like setting up your two best friends on a blind date and letting them make whoopee. And I feel like you've done that probably in several permutations, but this whole, I just want to go here for a second, this whole concept of then taking the poetry and like you write, you actually help companies solve culture, communication, and engagement problems by turning storytelling, brain science, and spoken word poetry into unforgettable business strategy. Like what? Like what a mashup. How did that come about? And tell us more about how you see this vision of poetry actually helping business strategy.
yeah, for sure. So it's one of those things where sometimes you're doing something and you don't realize that you're doing something because you're just breathing. You know what I mean? One of our gifts for a lot of us are just like breathing air, and we don't look at them as special. We don't look at them as unique. Someone who's never seen it before is like, pump the brakes. What are you doing? And that's kind of how it was. I did this entrepreneurial training program here in Nashville for artists. And so it was visual artists, painters, et cetera, like all the different mediums of art. And people were coming to this Periscope program, which was like an 8-week program where you learn the business of how to be a business person. Because most artists are just like, I'm in for the art, and they don't really know how to track anything or do anything. And so we have to pitch at the end of the program. And I wasn't really sure like what I wanted my program to be about, because as an actor, it's like I audition, I get the role, I don't, nothing really to pitch there. As a poet, I had done everything I wanted to do up to that point, traveled all over the country, several albums. So it really wasn't anything in that market. And we all have this mentor that we get to sit down with and help us. And that's somebody who's in the industry, depending upon our where we are. And so for me, one of my mentor was one of the founders of Live Nation. And we were sitting down and we were having lunch one day. And he was like, so what do you want to pitch about? And I was like, I don't really know. And then I was like, oh, I do this thing where I go into corporate and I kind of help tell better stories by blending poetry and business talk and inspiration. And I blend it all together. And he was like he was eating or drinking. I don't know. He just stopped. And he was just like, what the hell are you doing? He was like, you don't need to do anything else but that. He was like, I've been in business 25 years. He's like, I'm not anything like that. He was like, you need to stop everything else you're doing, that. And that was kind of like the light bulb, right? Like the light bulb going off. And again, I had done these keynotes and these one-offs for 7 or 8 years up to this point. But I wasn't looking at it like, oh, you're a speaker. It was just, people were bringing me in to do these conference wrap-ups where I would sit in the conference for 3 days. And then like I would wrap up, I would come in and do this part over here, or I would do this. And I was doing these one-offs for years, but never like, this is a business. You should be a speaker.
Yeah.
That moment. But in that moment, it was just like the light bulb went off. And so for me, it was always, and I had a little bit of experience in corporate when I lived in Albany, New York, and just seeing how that process worked, I was like, ugh, yuck. You know what I mean? So
there's opportunity. There's opportunity.
And so it became a thing where it was like, I see what they're doing and how they're doing it. And because I've been in their world, I understand why they do it that way. But there is another way that I think will make it a little bit easier for folks to adapt to, for folks to adopt the ideas of the company, for folks to really lean into what people want the company and what leaders are looking for from employees or from leadership or whatever, right? So I can come in and I can bring this creativity in, and people are going to say, oh, creativity has no place here, and why will we use it? But because I'm using your language, and I'm using all of your resources. I'm just putting it in this gumbo and mixing it up and delivering it to you in a way that you've never had it delivered before. And that's kind of the secret sauce, right? Like I tell people all the time, like, I'm not coming into your industry knowing more about your industry than you. I don't know more about your employees. I don't know more about what your particular business does than you. But what I can do and what I do is I bring this different perspective. So in essence, I'm a POV shifter. I just want you to see what you do from a different perspective. And so when I deliver and I give it to you in a different way, it's just like this awakening, these neurons popping where it's like, oh, we've heard this information before, but we've never heard it like this, or we've never looked at it from this point of view, from this perspective. And so the poetry that's wrapped in the middle of it just becomes like this extra cherry on top, because it's like, in 1 minute, he's talking about like KPIs and telling a story, but then in the next breath, like he's rhyming, but then he jumps back like strategy, but then he comes back to a story, but then he's rhyming. And so your brain is just like, whoa, like what is going on? Like what is happening here? But it's this beautiful melting and this tingling that happens, causes like, all this neural coupling to happen in your brain that maybe we aren't always used to in the corporate setting, right? So I always tell people I like to bring right brain ideas into left brain spaces, and it helps folks to really unpack and see things from a different perspective, and it becomes really sticky.
Yeah, I would bet that most of our listeners are going, yeah, neuro tingling ain't happening. 99% there are not a lot of neuro tingling going on.
Not a lot.
My corporate world. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Erin here. Stop. Do not do it. Don't fast forward. I have something too important. I have a couple of very passive aggressive questions to ask you that you don't want to miss. Here they are. 1, do you find yourself often comparing yourself to others? Like, they work harder than me, they get noticed more than me, they have better luck than me, they're smarter than me. Or do you also just feel exhausted from having to always work as hard, if not harder, than everybody else to stand out and succeed? I know you have these challenges. We all do. And this is why I wrote the 50% rule. And I know you need to read another book like you need a hole in the head. But I'm telling you, this book and this rule, I'm obsessed with it. And it has changed my life. It has changed the lives of others around us. And it has also been the formula for success behind so many successful people. Savannah Bananas, Hamilton, Weird Al Yankovic. The 50% rule is the simplest shortcut to stop comparing, stop copying, stop chasing other people, and like literally compete in your league of your own. There isn't a day that doesn't go by where I stop myself and I'm like, oh, she did a talk that I wish I could do. She's got more. No, it doesn't matter. Because we don't compete in the same league. I compete in a league of my own because I am constantly 50% ruling things. So if you're interested in this concept, which, by the way, is more fun as a team sport, but at least start with yourself. You cannot miss this book. It's not only powerful, it's really freaking fun to read. That is always my number one goal. It was my number one goal with my first book. It's my number one goal with the 50% rule. I want to make it enjoyable to read it. Why? So that you read it. So if you feel like you are stuck with these comparison cramps or just all the symptoms that I talk about in the book of sleep running syndrome, self-doubt gout, and pioneer paralysis, and well, you have to read the book to find out more, then just go buy the darn book. Easiest way, go to Amazon, search the 50% rule, and I cannot wait to hear how you 50% rule things. My favorite word in the dictionary is authenticity. My second favorite is vibe. And I know yours sort of headlined as vibe with a touch of authenticity and, vice versa. But there's probably a lot that goes into this. I know you do a lot of, talks and YouTube videos, but what does that mean to you? Elevate your vibe. What's the essence of that?
Yeah. So for me, it's always about being able to push people up, and I think in corporate, a lot of times we don't look at that from an inward perspective. It's just like, this is what we're here to do. This is how we do it. This is the result. And there's really no shift. And so it's almost as if it's flatlined. And we know that things that are flatlined aren't really alive. They aren't really living. And so what elevate your vibe for me means is I want to just come in and just do that. Boom. And you're going to come back down here. That's fine. That's perfectly normal, right? But then we're going to go back up a little bit. And then next thing you know, there's this heartbeat, right? That we have, that we create together, and that's the beautiful thing about what I do is that it's not ever about me. I'm a conduit to help you get across what it is that you need to get across. And so when we co-create this vision, we get to together create this heartbeat that maybe you all didn't have before, that maybe didn't exist in your office before, but now it does, right? And so like, that's what elevate your vibe means to me is just, we're going to take us away from that stagnation that we've been used to and kind of give us a little bit of a heartbeat. So
yeah, I love that. I think so many times people think about tactics and, playbooks, whether it's their personal career or it's the business strategy itself. And
right.
I do believe that if you can just sort of say, what if we first just focus on elevating the vibe? And then you figure out I think you'll figure out what that is. I love that so much. One of the topics you talked about, I loved, you said, no, don't microwave your growth. Can you talk to our listeners about what do you mean there?
Yeah. So a lot of times, again, we just get stuck in our routine. We get stuck in this has to be this way. And especially nowadays, we live in this fast new age society where everything is fast and everything's right in front of our face. The dopamine, we don't have to work for it anymore. It's just like pick up your phone, boom, it's right there instantly. And that's not really how like we were meant to be. We weren't meant to just like have the dopamine be instant, and so, we live in a world where it's just instantaneously happens for us. And it's great. That high is great in the moment, but then after a while, you start to feel bad. Like if you doom scroll, you're like, oh my gosh, it's been an hour. Like what is, you feel bad because your brain is telling you like, this is not healthy for us. This doesn't help us grow. And so it's just the old school thinking of grandma and aunt and all the folks who we love, who used to cook those meals for us and how long they took. And, sometimes my grandmother would cook and she would start cooking on Saturday for a meal that wasn't prepared until like Sunday afternoon. And in that moment, right, she was teaching us patience. She was teaching us like how to have resilience, how to take our time to get the results that we wanted. And now everything is just fast. It's right in our face. And yes, it's instant and it's right there and we have it, but it doesn't really taste good. You go to Kroger or Aldi's or wherever you go and you get one of those frozen meals. You're like, I just got to eat quick because I'm hungry. I just want a little something. And you pop it in the microwave and then you get it and you eat it. You put a little salt and pepper on it. You're like, it's not that bad. And then about 5 minutes after you eat it, your stomach is just like, hello, right? And you're like, I shouldn't have ate that. All the sodium. Oh, now I have a headache. And so that's kind of what we do in the business world is that we just try to bring in these new hires and this is what we do. This is how we do it. And then they're just like, oh, and the dopamine kicks in and it feels great, right? And then about 3 or 4 days in, they're like, oh, I think I made a mistake. I don't want to really be here because what is happening? It's too much, too fast. It's not any human connection. And then people leave. And now you're dealing with like, oh, we have to pay so much more money to bring in somebody else. And so we just keep this cycle rolling. So that's the microwave part is that we try to get everything fast and some stuff can't be fast. That's totally fine. But everything can't be fast. Everything can't be right there. We have to get back to our human element of showing people compassion and love and using the things that we have inside of us to really help people grow. And again, it just goes into that being authentic part too, right? Like, how do you connect with folks in a way that says, oh, like I'm supposed to be here and I belong here and I have purpose here and all of the things that we kind of negate sometimes. So.
Oh, well, I love that. I am a self-professed in my first book, instant gratification whore, that I want that sort of instant. And it is a muscle that I've really been working on, especially in my growth as a speaker, right? To sort of enjoy that journey and stop looking for that like every day as a rocket ship. I also love, because I love like sassy takes on things and you do that so well. You also talk about leaders, how sometimes they need to fire themselves.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Like sometimes it's just, and again, it's us thinking about this. What if you were hiring you? Would you say are your blind spots as a leader, or some of the weaknesses that you have? And how can you improve upon those things? Because sometimes leaders want to come in and they want to fix every problem.
And fix everyone else.
And it's like, sir, ma'am, sometimes we got it, right? We need to let you know what's going on, but you can pull back a little bit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's every single thing, because then it becomes a trust issue. You don't trust me to do my job. You don't trust me to handle it. Like, I am grown, right? Like, when we're in the office, I don't really see any children around unless it's bringing your child to work day. So we're grown. You got to let people figure stuff out sometimes. And when a boss doesn't do that, they need to take a step back. You know, they need to take a step back. And another part of that also is this, we have to get the last word. It's okay as the leader for you to just not talk. Sometimes it's okay. It's okay for you to be quiet. It's okay for you to let everybody else figure it out, and you can sit back and you can listen and you can watch and you can observe. That's totally fine. It's all right. Because then it becomes, why do you always have to have the last word? Is this like a dominance issue that you have? And again, sometimes leaders don't even recognize that they do it. And then you have employees who don't speak up because they're like, I'm not going to tell her that. Like, I'm not about to get fired. And so then it becomes this space where the ground that we are tilling and the seeds that we think we're planting as a leader, we think we're planting these really powerful, great seeds that are going to grow, but the ground is soiled. The ground is poisoned. We don't even realize it. And we're just planting seeds. Oh yeah, this is going to be a great harvest. Great. And it's just like, why is nothing growing? Why isn't our office getting better? What's going on? I'm doing everything I think I'm supposed to. And it's like, no, because people don't feel like they can communicate with you. They don't feel like they can be their authentic selves, right? They don't feel like they can say what needs to be said because they're like walking on eggshells. And so sometimes as a leader, you got to fire yourself. You got to sit yourself down and ask yourself, like, what am I doing wrong? And a lot of times that comes from also being open enough to say, hey, I'm going to have these little 2 or 3 minute, and I've done this when I do workshops and trainings with folks, is we'll have leaders figure out what works best for them, because leaders are always on the go. They do a lot, right? So it is sometimes they don't have 30 minutes for you to sit down and talk to them. But what if I'm going from one place to another on Mondays, and Mondays is the days when you want to catch me in the hallway. You got 2 minutes to say what you feel, and I'm going to be open, and I'm going to be open and responsive to it. And I'm going to listen to what you're actually saying.
Yeah.
And what that does is it helps the leader kind of clear some of the blind spots that they don't see, because sometimes it's the frontline folks. Usually it's the frontline folks who are touching every single thing. And they're the ones who can come back and say, hey, this isn't working, or this does work, or we need to shift this. And they can give that to the leader, and the leader can say, okay, let's talk to everybody. Let's create something and figure out what works best. And then that's how we grow good ground. And that's how we make sure people come back and stay and want to be here. But we got to take our hands off of it sometimes, and we got to fire ourselves sometimes. So.
I love that. I love that. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about creativity. You know, it's interesting in your story, not surprising, but, you know, some of your best things came when you were bored. Obviously, the poetry story about being bored in the library, or when you were just experimenting and sort of stumbling, right? Whether it's the corporate gigs or going to the business class training thing. And I think that is harder and harder. And these days, and harder for our audience, they're mostly in the corporate workspace, right? Because of meetings, emails, etc. What are some tips that work for you that might also work for our listeners around when you're stuck creatively, or you need that space to think and innovate, etc.?
I think a lot of times people use the words writer's block. People say that a lot to me. I'm not creative. I always have writer's block. I can't do what you do, Rashad. And that's, and I'm like, well, you're not supposed to do what I'm doing, because we have different DNA. So we're different people, right? So you're not even supposed to try to copy what I'm doing. And I think what happens a lot of times, and again, like I bring in poetry and writing into my corporate workshops, because again, that's something that we're not exploring. And so it's amazing to see like these very buttoned up C-suite and, corporate VPs and CEOs and stuff getting ready to write. And they're all,
Yeah. Now is the time.
Yeah. And it's like, this is not going to do anything for me. And then like by the end of the session, like they're literally like in tears, or they're just like undoing their ties because they're writing about things that they haven't even thought about in 30, 40 years.
Mm.
But what folks can do is write about and talk about, and I'm using writing as the example because I really think that if you sit down and write, I think writing is a key to unlocking the door to so many different creative avenues. And so I think if we start with writing, it does something powerful for us. But sometimes people sit and they stare at the page and they're just like, I'm not creative. I don't have anything to write about. So I think one of the first things you can do is you have to change the conversation that you're having in your mind. Because if you automatically take all the ink out of the pen before you even put it on the page, of course you're not going to write anything. So I need people to make sure that they're just open to even the process of just, let me just sit down and just see what happens. And then the second thing is, don't worry about what you write.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Don't sit and think that you have to write about this, or this. Just write whatever comes out, right? We like to call it a flow of consciousness or a free write. And it's literally just, it's raining today. I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Oh, I have to pick like whatever comes out, let that be the thing that flows out. And then what happens, the more you do that, the more that stream of consciousness will start to take you into certain places that you didn't expect. It'll start to unlock, because what will happen is now you're softening up that pen, you're softening up that palette in your mind. And now that thing that was once this hard ground is now starting to soften into this place where now you're starting to think about things or write about things you weren't even expecting to write about. You look back at the page and you're like, how did I go from talking about this to talking about that? But then what happens is now you're like, oh, I want to explore this more. So you get a new clean sheet of paper and you start exploring that thing that's new, that's different, that makes you think about, when you were 10 years old or whatever it is. And then that starts to unlock. And now that you're thinking about when you were 10 and you're like, wait a minute, like I'm 53 years old. I haven't thought about this thing in like 40 something years. Oh, I remember that I used to like make clay when I was little, like these little clay dolls. I want to go to the craft store and get some clay again and just see what that did. And then boom, next thing you know, it's like you're doing all this stuff, or you're thinking about something that you've never done. And you're like, I would love to like figure out what that is and try that out. So I think that writing, free writing with no intention, just writing is a great tool to unlock so many other avenues of creativity. It's a dam that we have in front of us. And I don't know when this dam is built. I don't know when it's constructed, but it happened somewhere between, 10 years old and 20 years old, or in that range where that dam is just built and we just build it up. And then we just forget about like the fact that we used to have imaginary friends. And we forget about the fact that we used to climb from trees with no fear. We forget about the fact that all these things that we were born with, right? We were born with a lot of these things, but we put this dam up in front of it. And so then now that we become grown, it's like we're afraid to take a chance. Yeah. We're afraid to be innovative. We're afraid to step up and show up for ourselves because we've been taught that you can't do that.
Well, and I think so much of it, having two teenage children, writing is taught so prescriptively. It's just like reading, right? You're taught to read certain things. You're taught to write, a certain paper with a certain genre, where you're not taught that writing is an avenue. You're taught that it's a way to get a grade based on the rubric. And I think for corporate friends, putting myself back in that world, I think PowerPoint, it's so tactical, is such a big piece of that. There's so much leaning on coming in to that meeting with this perfectly crafted deck. And so I think when somebody's asked to come up with a strategy or a process or a new product, their mind immediately goes to that beautiful end product and not the substance of which is behind that. And I think I just encourage our listeners, like when you were telling the story about, and then I played with clay, like that might lead you to, wow, I would shape the clay I wanted. Maybe our next product for our customers, that we allow them to shape certain features. It's that wandering isn't just about, art or your own personal growth. It really can be where the best ideas I think everybody knows that, like, when like, I was just, showering today and I'm working on a keynote for next week, and, like, one final thing kinda unlocked how I was gonna end it, right? And, like,
Right.
we can't all shower for hours during the day.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so, like, the writing to me is, like, the next best thing.
It's a powerful thing for sure.
It
I always tell
it really
people
is.
that in keynotes, I always say you don't need, you don't need more PowerPoint.
Yeah.
You need more power in your point. You
Yeah.
know, it just comes from us telling those really rich stories, because
Yeah.
again, it's the journey to getting there.
Yeah.
It's the process of getting from A to B to C. And then yes, getting to D is where we want to be, but it's that middle ground where
Mhm.
like the people start to get in and buy into what you're saying. Some people will arrive at the end, but most people are there from the beginning and they're like, hey, how do we get there? Oh, we have to get to this step. Oh, wow. Okay, we did that. That's a beautiful thing. Right now we have to go over here. Yes. And then we
Mhm.
have to, so it's the journey part of it. And we
Yeah.
want to bring our people with us on that. And we want to give them the ability to play a part in helping us get there and helping us unpack those things.
So true, so true. That's what stories do, right?
Yep.
It's like a ride-along car. People are a sidecar, and sometimes they're
Yep.
on your story, and sometimes they're on their own.
Yep.
Hey there, it's Erin. I'm just popping in real quick to ask you a question. Is there any chance you know someone who is looking for a keynote speaker for their upcoming event? Look, I know that many event organizers, they struggle to find a speaker who provides both tangible value and business knowledge, but that also lights their audience on fire. And I truly believe there aren't many speakers like me out there who are both former corporate executives and professionally trained speakers. And there's definitely none that roll in with an orange suitcase they unpack with their audience. Trust me on that. I would love nothing more than to bring my message of using authenticity as your strategic career and business advantage to people spinning in your universe, especially if you'd be there. I promise my talks always create an immediate buzz, but not just right after, but for months and years after the event is over. You can learn more about my message, style, and reviews, and share my speaking info by going to beauthenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. That's B, just the letter B, authenticinc.com/keynote-speaking. Or of course, we have it right in the show notes to make it easy for you too.
Speaking of stories, you talk about the power of storytelling in business. Obviously, this is something you do professionally. Was there a time when you had a certain story that you just like, no, I'm not going to share that. That's not impactful or whatever. And then you finally did, and you're like, holy shit, I'm so glad I shared that story.
So there's a story I tell. So I have a new keynote. It's called A Dose of Story.
Mm.
Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. And so across industry, I help companies unlock all four of these chemicals that I think they're in front of our faces every day, but we don't always realize it. And then when we do, sometimes people don't explain it in a way that like everybody can understand. And so with this keynote, I really try to break down these chemicals and why they're important to our business and why they're important to what we do. And there's a story about my son, my oldest son. He was born at 32 weeks. And so like I don't and that was a story that I had for a really long time. And I felt like maybe because I use it in my oxytocin session when I'm trying to build, show how we can build trust and build empathy and engagement with each other. And for a long time, I had this story and I was like, it's just too heavy. It's too, but I go through this whole journey. And so, yeah, that story was a story that took me a while to tell it. And then the first time I told it on stage, it was like this rush for me of like emotion, of course, but then the audience, I'm looking at them and they're just like literally on the edge of their seat. Like, whoa. You know what I mean? So, and it's one of those stories where it has oxytocin, but I ended with like really high endorphins to like that release to let them free again. And, like that's one of the stories that gets the most compliments when I tell it because people are really like, they're locked in, they're tied into it. And I try to like paint the picture for them of what's going on from the time we figure out what's happening all the way until the end process. And so, yeah, like that's one of those stories that I I was hesitant to tell at first, but then I ended up telling it, and it's been really powerful. So
I'm curious, the first time you told it, how sort of prepared? Because I think a lot of people listening are like, well, this is what you do for a living. I have a ton of stories, but I don't know how to tell them in sort of the eloquent way or with the message of oxytocin versus endorphins. Tell us, like, how messy do you get, or are you a super prepared, or what lessons can people take from
it's
how you
super
think about
messy.
it?
It's super messy. I'm an artist. It's super
Yeah.
messy.
Yeah.
And so I mean, you prepare as much like now. I mean, like I prepare keynotes now, like for me, keynotes, because again, I come from an acting background. So keynotes are like one-man shows for me. That's
Mm-hmm.
how I prep my keynotes. They're like a one-man show. If you've ever been to theater, seen a one-man show for people out there, like that's kind of how I prepare my keynotes from a mental standpoint. But the stories, like I know the frame, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it written down and then I memorize every moment of the story. No, I'm being authentic. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you the story. So I could tell that story on Tuesday and then tell it on Thursday, and the gist of the story, right? The is going to be the same, but there may be some points in the middle that are different. Maybe I highlight something a little more because the audience reacted. You know,
Yeah.
like they laugh at a point, and I'll go into that a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
Where another day I might not go as deep into that point because I didn't get the reaction, or it feels like I should just keep going. So when you tell stories, you just need to tell the story.
Mm.
Don't worry about pre-planning it, because most people, right, are not keynote speakers. Most folks are just like, hey, I'm an everyday person, which we all are everyday people, but right, most people are not keynote speakers. So they're like, hey, I want to tell this business story, or I want to tell this personal story, and I want to tell it in a way that's effective. Like, how can I be better? Well, the first thing is get out of your head and thinking that it has to be perfect, because I've never heard a perfect story. I don't even know what that is.
And actually, if you hear a perfect story, quote unquote, you probably don't connect with it because it's too perfect, right? Right.
It's just like not relatable, right?
Yeah. Right.
So, like, just tell me the story. And again, stories are only as good as a person telling it, because I've heard stories that like, oh man, the story was great, but how you told it was not. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, so you missed an opportunity to connect because you didn't lean into that. Like, just lean into the truth.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like, be truthful in how you tell the story. Be authentic in how you tell the story, right? We hype up stories a lot on stage because it's part of the effect of how we pull people in. But a lot of times it's just like, just tell the story, don't linger too long on certain details, right? But don't skip past things either.
Yeah.
And it becomes the more stories you tell, I think the better you get at storytelling. You can't just say, I'm a storyteller. I told one story or, one time. It's like, probably not as good as you think you are. But the more stories you tell, the more you tell that story, the better you'll get at it. And then the more freedom you'll have. And we've all heard family members, right? The tells the story every 4th of July or every
Oh,
holiday.
my father, every 5 minutes.
And it's
Every
just
5
like,
minutes. Yeah.
they meet somebody new and I got something I want to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And every time it's like, I didn't know. Like, okay, the main part, right? I know, like,
Yeah.
the
There's something new.
part of the story, but like, then he's like, yeah, but then there was a baseball bat that we had. And heard the baseball bat part before. Well, yeah, I did. But that's the power of stories, right? It's like we tell them, the more we remember about a story, or the more we're like, oh yeah, this part made me think about this part that I never even told you guys before. So the more stories you tell, the better. And for my speakers who are out there listening, again, like, don't worry about trying to like memorize your story, because you're not a robot. You don't want it to come across as like rehearsed and inauthentic. You want it to just be real. Like, you want it to flow. I'm a MOTH GRANDslam champion, and the story that I told for MOTH was a story that we worked on maybe 3 times, because the people from MOTH were like, we want you to work on the story. And I was like, I know it. I'll tell it when I get on stage. And so, but because I just wanted it to be as fresh as possible in the moment.
Yeah.
And as real as it could be in the moment. So again, as you prepare for your stories, know where you're going, but also know, like, hey, we're going to go on this journey together.
Yeah.
And paint the picture for you, and you're going to follow along, and you're going to lean in, and you're going to be a part of the story. So
I love that. One of my biggest regrets in my TEDx was listening to them make you memorize it for, 2 months. This is my biggest regret.
yeah,
Because, and it's refreshing to hear from you, because I always say, well, I'm not an actor. If I'm an actor and I memorized it, I could have performed it authentically.
Yeah.
But I think even as an actor, right, that true authenticity is nearly impossible if you don't give yourself some liberty to,
You
have
have to.
have that framework. But, you know,
You have to. Again, when I'm learning a script, it's just like what's on the page is what it is, and I'm able to pull from the words on the page to do whatever in between the words, right?
yeah.
I'm as a speaker, like I'm gonna create my frames
hmm
and I'm gonna fill it in with the stories or fill it in with the case studies or whatever. But it's not gonna be memorized because I don't ever want to get on stage and sound like someone who's telling you facts and it sounds and feels like this. Like I'm free on stage, I'm loose, and I think that's what I love about you. And we had met at Impact, and it was just something immediately. I was like, oh, she's super cool, right? Like it was something about your energy that just connected. And then once I was able to go look at your stuff and see the things you do on stage, I was like, this is my people, right? Because it's the freedom to just say, hey, I'm free up here,
Mm,
and I may not have always been free, but I'm free now.
Yeah.
And you can be free. And I'm going to use whatever I need to use to show you, right? I want to be that mirror where you look at me and you don't see me, you see yourself. You see like what I could be, what I should be,
yeah.
maybe what I don't like and what I know I can now change. And I think
Mhm.
that's the most powerful thing I think as a speaker that we can do on stage is just be free. Like I don't care about what people think. I don't care about any of those things. I just know that I'm going to get up here. I'm going to make the client happy. I'm going to make the audience think and remember, and I'm going to make them, it's going to be super sticky where they're going to weeks and months from now be talking about the guy who did, they're not going to remember my name. They will remember what I look like. But
They'll remember your name more than they'll remember mine, but
the poet dude, right?
Poet-
And, you know what I mean?
authenticity.
Whichever, right? But
Yeah.
but it's just, that all doesn't come if I'm not free.
right.
I have free up there. And I think that's what makes us really powerful at what we do is that we're just like, listen, this has been a gift that we've been given and we've been working hard at. And so now we get to go out here. Because again, man, the stage is the icing.
It is.
Out there, we've done the work.
Absolutely. I know. It always kills me when people are like, well, is it more to have you for an hour versus I'm like, oh, the delivery's the fun part.
Right.
Like, no, that doesn't matter. That's actually the gift.
Right.
It's the preparation, both in the micro, the macro, right? The research. Well, and I think your message is so powerful. And I would just reiterate for our listeners too, like this being free, like it is not just on stage. This is in your board meeting you go to. Like when you're, high maintenance, overbearing boss says you need to have bullets and memorize them and practice them, you can nod your head, but don't freaking do it.
But
When you get an opportunity to speak at a town hall, have a structure, but be free. Don't freaking memorize it. When you're presenting a strategy, at a big meet, like all this on stage stuff is the same because it creates connection and trust. And so I just want to like hammer it into you that,
we like humans. If you're listening to this and you're a human being, you like other human beings. You don't necessarily like robots to tell you what to do all the time. And you don't really want to sit and listen to a robot for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour. You want to connect with the person. So you should want to be a person when you talk to people.
Hallelujah.
You know?
Hallelujah.
Yeah. No, you should be a person. You should be a person for sure.
You should be a person.
Yeah.
It's your biggest role. All right. 2 more questions that we always ask. One, I'm going to give you a little extra challenge, but the first is a buck that story. We always ask our guests, can you tell us a story when you sort of buck the norm and good things happened?
My TED Talk in 2013, I was in a room. As you know, you do the meeting with folks and there's this mixer and there's doctors and lawyers and astrophysicists, literally, people who have done amazing things overseas. And then there's a poet in there. And I'm literally like, I don't belong in this room with these people at all. And I was trying in the moment to figure out every way that I could to get out of it. Literally, I was like, maybe I could say that this little fish had some poison in it and I have stomach issues now and I can't do talk tomorrow. Like I was literally trying to figure out every way. And so on the drive home, I'm just like, this is not going to go well. The talk is fine. I feel like I'm prepared and all that stuff, but I just don't. The syndrome of imposter has made its way in. But as I was driving home, there was this, in my mind, like the word fear just kept flashing. Like I was at a stoplight, and you know how you look at the stoplight at night, and then you get the little orbs or whatever in your eyes sometimes when you stare at it too long. And in those orbs, like, so the word fear just kept popping up. But the word fear was written like an acronym. And so I'm just not even connecting it at first. I'm like, fear. Like, I know yes, I have plenty of fear. Stoplights. Thank you. But then when I got into the driveway of the house, it popped up one last time and it was written as an acronym again. And it said, fright ends after remembering. And in that moment, it was like, yes, all those people are who they are. Yes, all those people have done all the things that they've done. But remember all the things you've done to get to this point. Remember all of the things you've done to put yourself in position to be here. This isn't by happenstance. Like you worked, you've made a name for yourself doing the thing that you do for a reason. And so now you're here and you have this opportunity. And yes, fear can be there, but it's going to end after you start remembering your why, after you start remembering your purpose. And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, so the next day I gave the TED Talk, got a standing ovation. And afterwards, people were coming up to me. I was able to end up, connecting with folks who ended up hiring me later as a speaker. Because even in that moment, like I wasn't a speaker yet. Like I was just a poet, put together a talk that was some poetry, but a lot of just communicating the issue between these two students and their similarities and their differences, right? Like that's what my talk was about. But it was in that moment that it was like, if I had backed out, if I had said I'm not going to do it, like I don't know if I would be sitting here right now, because it was in that moment that showed me from that moment forward, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to have fear. It's okay to be weary. That's normal. But that acronym always pops into my head. It's just that fright ends after remembering. And so once I go through that, once I have those moments where it's like, okay, and then I'm like, you know what? But here we are. And that fright ends after remembering our why. And so like, that's the important part, is just to, do it anyway. I always tell my children, I just told my sons this recently, when you're fearful and when there's anxiety attached to it, then you probably should still do it anyway, because that's normal. So one of my sons was talking about cutting his hair. And I was like, listen, if you're a little afraid because you've never had a haircut before, he's grown locks for a long time. So I'm like, you're a little afraid, that's fine. You're a little anxious, that's fine. But if you feel those things, then you probably should still do it. If the other choice is like, I just really don't want to do it at all, like I just don't want to do it, then don't do it. But if it's the first one, then do it anyway. And I tell that, and that's a message that I think, for business folks, sometimes it's going to be that anxiousness because it's different, it's new. And your brain is like, wait a minute, this is not the pattern. We don't do it this way. So it's going to be a little pushback, but the goal should always be to ask yourself those questions, right? Is it something that I'm just nervous about, or is it something that I just really don't want to do? And there's a real valid reason behind it. And then you can make a decision. So
that's so good. That's so good. Before I ask the last question, where can people connect with you and follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Rashad Rayford, RASHAD, RAYFORD. And then my website is rashadthepoet.com. It's RASHADTHAPOET.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes as well. Definitely make sure you follow him. So my final question is usually kind of a softball, but I'm going to make it a fastball for you. The question really is, what's one last tip to make work suck less? But can you do it in poem? And you can obviously use one of your favorite poems to sort of close us out, to give us that final tip.
Yeah. So make work suck less.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best way to make work suck less is to lean into your success, to be as authentic as you can be, because see, what's detrimental to your health is everything. So you might as well lean into that thing that's true. You might as well hold on to that feeling that's in the pit of your stomach that is begging to come through, that is asking on a day like today, it'll be the day that I change. The day that I take these thoughts and rearrange to create something bigger than myself. Maybe if I just decided for a second to move out of the way, or maybe if I decided for a second to just use the 50% rule. Like the book that Erin has. I mean, you could go ahead and grab that from Amazon or even her website for sure, because this is all about the impact that we make together. So listen, sometimes it just takes being steady. Sometimes it just takes being quiet. Sometimes it just takes looking beyond ourselves and asking, how can we continue to grow? And the answer's always been the same, and it's always been true. Lean into your humanity and lean into the authentic you. There we go.
Boom, knocked it out of the park. That was amazing. Obviously, custom. I didn't give you any preparation. Follow Rashad, hire Rashad, work with Rashad, cheer on Rashad. This was amazing. Thank you so much for everything, including that incredible poem.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. Appreciate it. Keep going.
Hey, it's Erin with a teeny request. If you have ever gotten any value from this podcast and you'd like us to stick around, plus you want it to continue to grow so we can kind of swindle bigger and more knowledgeable guests to join us and to keep providing you with tangible and inspiring actions you can take to achieve the career and life you deserve, could you please just take 1 minute to leave us a rating and a review? Those reviews go a long way in attracting guests to the show, and candidly, they really make Nicole and I's day. We see you. We really do. So when you have the time and inspiration, we'd love to see a rating and review from you. Thank you.